We are recording this for some of our friends who cannot be here. Welcome everybody to Bel Canto 101. I'm looking around the room and seeing many friends who've been with us for a while. I'm seeing new faces whom I don't know. Welcome to all the members. Welcome to Guildhall of East Hampton friends, new friends of ours. It's great to see you guys. A special welcome to my friends from Cabrini Terrace, which is my building, and the best welcome to Dr. Ruth, who in my screen is right up. She's a huge fan of opera singers, and I'm so thrilled that she's here. You know, Dr. Ruth, like your spirit of survival and positive attitude is just like what we've all needed during COVID, and I am honored to have you as a neighbor. Welcome. So it's difficult to imagine that we're almost a year old. Can you all believe this? A little bit just for people who don't know us. We started on March 16th of last year, which is literally like in a couple weeks time, a year ago, and launched the Vakai project. So what was the Vakai project? It was basically a daily online journal for singers whom Derek and I knew, because we knew that singers were cut off from us, cut off from each other, cut off from their teachers and their audiences. And we were like, well, maybe this is a good time to just do some technical practice. Of course, we had no idea how long it was going to last, so we just kept on making it up as we went along. And so then the summer programs were canceled. So we did Vakai again and called it Vakai Summer 2020. And yes, you guessed it, COVID continued. And so we had Vakai Fall 2020. What was interesting is that every time we ran the course, it became more interactive. Singers responded more. And it was very clear at that point that what singers needed more than inspiration was community. They needed the opportunity to be able to sing together, not so much like necessarily as a choir, but to have the community spirit of singers. And what an amazing thing happened. They started to make practice videos and practice in public. And that was a kind of revelation. There are lots of people I see on my screen at the moment who are taking part in daily practice at the moment. And it's wild to think that singers would do that. But that's one of the great things I think that COVID brought us, is that singers became very open with each other in this community. So the stages were closed, but here we were on Zoom singing together. We also read a lot because the course was delivered in essay form. And as the course continued, I started to share more and more research material. So reading is very important for singers because the vast majority of stuff that we study, in fact, cannot be found on Spotify, because a lot of what we study predates recorded sound. So while we are here tonight to really listen to what we do know from the history of sound, I wanted to also tell you that as a community, we read a lot together as well. And in the coming months, we are going to do more of that. We founded Bel Canto Book Club during the fall, which was a fantastic way to spend Wednesday evenings. It's kind of fun to have Wednesday evening together with Judy Malafront and the other people and Dave. Also, during that time, Bel Canto Bookshelf was born, which is curated by Dave Ekstrom. So if you're interested in reading about singing, check out Dave's fantastic blog. I think there are 11 different entries at the moment. Even if you don't have time to read the books yourself, reading about the books will teach you a lot and kind of pique your interest in certain things. So that brought us to like the third leg of things that we were doing, and that was listening. As the Vakai course grew, we started to share more and more videos of the kind of singing that we were trying to inspire. And we started to make listening videos, which really honed in on some of these aspects, which is where we're going to start our listening in a little bit. Spring 2021 brought us to a little break from Vakai, and we really focused in on this audience building. we really believe that an audience who knows more about the topic loves it even more. And listening together was really the place where we found that audience and singer can come together. And that, in the theater, we call it the fourth wall, right? You cannot break that fourth wall when you're a singer. So there is kind of in the theater, um, this unseen barrier between singer and audience. And I think the beauty of what we discovered during Audiophile Society is that audience member and singer could listen together and commune and learn from each other and support each other. And that was really a wonderful thing. So there we are, listening to music together as well. I'm going to share my screen for a second if I can do it effectively. I practiced for a year. Let me just see. The button is hiding from me. There it is. When we made our welcome packet for members, we were really inspired to kind of think about all of our philosophies. And so here you see really these three legs of what we do: read, sing, and listen. And what these pie charts are trying to tell you is that all singers and all fans of singing should really engage in all three of these things. So, for example, in the bottom left corner, you have the conservatory first year student who is singing about half of the time, but should also listen and read a lot because there's a lot of studying involved. When the professional singer is in rehearsal period, he's mostly singing, a little listening, a little reading. But what we are really here today to celebrate is the opera fan who mostly listens, whom we want to inspire to read. And yes, we want to inspire you to sing as well. Most people who love listening to singing also sing in the shower. So we encourage our opera fans to listen, read, and sing with the rest of us. So that's a bit of why we are here, what we are doing here today. I'm going to give it over to Derek to tell you a little about himself and about how this evening is going to go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Derek Goff. Rochelle and I have worked together for going on 10 years, ever since I was an undergraduate organ major, actually, at Westminster Choir College, and decided I should put on a production of The Marriage of Figaro, which was maybe one of the longer Marriage of Figaros there were because it was an undergraduate production. But I have learned a lot from her, and by working together with her, and over the years, we've gotten to work in many different environments. For the past 2 years, I was in the Lindemann program at the Metropolitan Opera, and will rejoin the music staff of the Met when it reopens. But I've really enjoyed starting with the Vakai project and continuing through all of Bel Canto boot camps intensives, and I taught an Italian course over the summer to get to know lots of new singers that I would have never otherwise known, voices I would have never otherwise heard, and to get to work together in a not time pressured, there's no deadline. It's just you're in a race against getting better. So I've really enjoyed doing that. Before I'm going to pass it over to Stephen, I will just make sure that everyone, if you're on a desktop, you probably know where the chat is pretty easily. You can find it at the bottom of your screen. I think it's in the corner of the iPhone, but as people are talking in the chat, it should pop up. So especially once we get sharing and listening to music, we love kind of passing notes where I would normally maybe whisper to Rochelle in row L at the Met and hope we don't get yelled at. Here we can actually say what we think in real time. So I hope you'll enjoy that, and let us know what you think as we go on, and I'll pass it on to our Audiophile Society curator and master of all things recording, Stephen Tharp.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve. And I'm going to start us off tonight with a little listening comparison. I don't know how many of you know the story of the early days of recording, but opera formed a very important part from the very beginning of recorded sound, because opera, of course, was one of the prominent and most popular forms of music at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. So The first thing I'm going to play you is two recordings of the same two people singing a duet 2 years apart. Now, why 2 years apart? The 2 years in question are 1924 and 1926. Well, let's see. What happened between those 2 years? Before 1925, all recordings were made acoustically. The singers sang into a horn, like the horn on an old Victrola that you would see, the machine that was made for reproducing such records. And Derek's put up a picture of an orchestra playing into a recording horn, and the sound waves were all captured acoustically, no electronic amplification whatsoever. The signal passed through the horn and was engraved on a wax cylinder or disc. Um, Now, in 1925, what happens? The microphone is invented, and sounds can now be recorded electronically. There still wasn't at first such a thing as amplification. That came a little bit later. But for the first time, sounds could be captured in an electronic format that gave you much greater bandwidth, much greater acoustic highs and lows, much greater dynamic frequency, and we're very fortunate to be able to tell the difference immediately by listening to two recordings, the first made in February 1924, the second in 1926, of the tomb scene of Verdi's Aida. That's the final duet between Radames and Aida, with the same two singers, Rosa Poncel, the American soprano, and the Italian tenor Giovanni Martinelli. Some people would say, well, why wasn't Caruso? But remember, Caruso had just died. He didn't live to 1920. I think he died in 1922 or three. But I may have my dates wrong there. But anyway, he did not live to see electrical recording. Now, I'm going to play you a little bit of the tomb scene from the 1924 recording first. I'm going to skip around in it a little bit so we get to the heart of the duet, but I'll play it from the beginning. Notice just the way it sounds. Notice the acoustic and the kind of limited acoustic that you hear on this recording, and kind of engrave that in your memory for a moment. Here we go. Now I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to go to the 1926 recording now, just so you can hear side by side the difference in that opening phrase that he sang by himself, and then skipping again to their duet section. And this time I'll let it play through to the end so you can enjoy their beautiful voices to the end of the duet. This is the 1926 electrical recording. Big difference in the sound. Yes, I wish I knew offhand who the Omneris is. Absolutely. Bravo. I wish I knew who the Omneris is. I'm sure you can find it somewhere, but it wasn't on the page that this was on, so I can't tell you. She should be credited. But that, in a nutshell, is the advance. Now, we in this group we enjoy a lot of acoustical recordings, so we're not saying bad good. We're just using it basically to get people's ears used to the difference between acoustic and electrical recordings, so that when you're listening to an acoustical recording, you can start to fill in your mind's ear, so to speak, what you might be missing from the actual sound off the recording. I'm going to hand it back to Derek right now, who I believe has our next little featurette, and I'll be back with some other excerpts later in our presentation.
So in the realm of recording technology and how microphones developed and also how the reproduction of the sound into albums or discs or LPs or whatever over time, we see a lot of traces of the past, but we also can retrace the past of voices that were trained without the idea of amplification. We can retrace the story of people who, whether they were teachers or preachers or rabbis or whatever, even if they weren't singers or they were stage actors, they had to develop their voice in the way that opera singers do, but in speaking. So we have a recorded trace of people who had no idea what it was to use a microphone for amplification, much less recording. Nowadays, of course, we all have iPhones in our pockets or whatever. If you have an Android, I'll forgive you. But we all have, a portable recording studio that walks around with us. We can take a video. I took a video on the subway platform to send to a singer in one of the groups today. We're going to play a short clip from one of our Sunday afternoon sessions that we had back in June, actually, with Will Crutchfield, who's an expert on recording technology and has worked to kind of do some study about replicating that in a way and imagining what we would hear if we recorded modern day singers with the same technology as we just heard. But he is going to share with us about a 2-minute clip of not singers, but imagining what speech was like for an audience in those days. And yes, will be back very soon.
These are the Countess Markievicz, who, despite her Polish name, was an Irish woman, and she was important in the struggle for Irish independence from Great Britain. And the second line that you see after her is spoken by the Premier of Israel, Golda Meir, in the 1960s. And here is how they sounded.
We know that Ireland can endure, and with God's help we can endure.
But that same faith that sustained us down the ages.
Next, 2 Christmas sermons preached in Italian, one by the Reverend Francis Auriemma in 1917, the other by the current Pope Francis in 2014.
Non possiamo non aprirgli il nostro cuore e supplicarlo.
Although there is no reason to doubt that all 4 people had strong feelings about the topics they are addressing, the first pair, the early speakers, use vocal timbres and modes of expression that we are more likely to associate with undisguised, unrestrained emotion. They knew that they were speaking into a recording device. She was making a broadcast for American sympathizers of the Irish Republic, and he was making a Victor record for sale to Italian-speaking Catholics in North America. But their assumption was that they should speak, even though they were in a recording studio, that they should speak the way they would have spoken in public. And that would have meant projecting their voices with no help whatever through their natural resonance and strength and the vocal training they had had, as all speakers did in those days. And the later pair actually was speaking in public, both of them, but they were accustomed to electronic help, and so was their audience.
So you really hear in a kind of almost comical way when we have especially the Francis Ariema and the current Pope. I mean, if you were a Catholic in 1928 in Passaic, New Jersey, you could have gone to church and heard a sermon preached in this voice. And not only is it something that has just totally fallen out in the theater, in basic training of communication, but it's also, you see in today's popular music, there's basically no sustained tone at any dynamic. So it's not something that we have in our ears. So then it becomes something that's very hard to replicate, much less, it's actually physically building the stamina to use those muscles, those tiny little vocal muscles, in the same way. So it's part of our goal to learn from these old recordings so that we can replicate what it would be like if we had never imagined that some machine could make our voice more resonant. So yes, there's a comment in the chat. Much of that type of sustained preaching is very much alive in the Black Church, and plenty of places still. We just would love to hear it on the Met stage.
So yes, this really puts in a nutshell why it is so important for us to listen to pre-microphone recordings, and why it is so important for today's singers and I think audiences to really explore this way people sang before they ever heard themselves recorded. So those of you who've been following the chat will see increasingly people throwing around jargon, like singer jargon. So the little next part that we're doing was inspired by our collaboration with Guildhall of East Hampton. Hi, all our friends from there. We decided to make a terminology sheet because we thought that if we were inviting audiences to come and listen to singers with singers, and singers were going to talk about certain things, it would be nice for them to kind of know what is all this jargon that we are throwing around. There are a couple of those things that come up a lot in our chat because these are the things that we feel singers have lost a little. And why? Because of this influence of the microphone and of us no longer living in a world of sustained tone. And so we started to make listening videos that really had little clips that would pin your ear on the thing that we really want to improve in our singers. And now we are inviting our audiences to pin their ears really. Linda from Guildhall was amazing when we did this with them. I saw Linda like getting closer and closer to her computer as we were listening, and she said when we were talking afterwards, she said, it's amazing, it's like the music has to really get in my ear. And that is what we're trying to inspire, is that the music that you listen so hard. We're also really trying to get people to be more ear-led and not eye-led, right? We are in such a visual world. For those of us who live in New York, you go to the Metropolitan, you're like, oh my God, I've never seen such a big stage. The drama, the flamboyance of is that a word, flamboyancy? I'm not English, is so spectacular in opera. But at the end of the day, it is that voice that comes at you that grabs your soul. Now I'm thinking about RBG again. She spoke so beautifully always about this power of the human voice. So we want to share with you little clips of 3 of these listening videos we made on the 3 topics that's really close to our heart. I will tell you the 3 topics and hopefully you'll be excited. The first one is legato. That is really the ability of the singer to put the notes together. Old singers, or what I call, the deader the better. Sometimes people say, which singer should I listen to? I'm like, the deader the better, because the kind of just the further you go in history, the better is the chance that you're hearing somebody who's singing true legato. So Derek is going to share the screen with us. This is the terminology sheet for opera lovers. Okay, so if you go to legato, you're like, what does that mean? And so it really means the connection. You can read that in your own time, right? All instruments do it differently, but the singer really has to carry the sound, which is what portamento means, which is the Italian word that we for it. Portamento, carrying of sound between from pitch A to pitch B. And if you really put your ear on it, like Linda, if you allow the music to really get in your head and you click on listen, here, you will be led to one of these videos that's called Listen to Legato, and Derek is going to play some clips for us. And I want you to really listen, not just to the notes, but what happens between the notes.
Ясно вижу, чувствую теперь я, куда себя в мечтах завлек, как мало в вас ко мне доверия, как чужд я вам и как далек, ах, я терзаюсь этой далью, состраду вам я всей душой, печалюсь вашей я печалью, и плачу вашей слезой. Терзаюсь этой далью, состражду вам я всей душой. Я вас люблю, люблю безмерно, без вас не мыслю дня прожить. Я подвиг силы беспримерной готов сейчас для вас свершить. О, милая, я вас люблю.
That is just an astonishingly beautiful voice, right? Just amazing, the beauty in that sound, but especially in Reagensta, yeah, you can really hear how the emotion flows from note to note. The next thing we really love listening to is coloratura, and Derek is going to talk to you a little about that.
Yeah, while I queue up the coloratura, I think that those two are examples are especially astonishing because when we learn about singing and talk about singing, it's so much about, oh, the German school, the Russian school, oh, the Italian school. But here you have people singing in all languages, singing what's thought to be a simple Brahms lullaby that, you know, people can sing to their kids, but singing it in basically the same style, because it was the style of classical singing and the natural emission of the human voice on a free flowing breath. And so we don't have so much of a separation of ideals, in fact, when it comes to letting the true voice out. Now, when we let the true voice out on many notes, as opposed to what we just heard, we often call it coloratura or fioratura. And when singers display the skill of agility, which is singing fast, like ah, or something like that, they have to develop this skill. Now, unfortunately, it's in modern days, this is a skill that's sometimes left for later. Let's work on simple things for now, because sometimes music reading is difficult, but you can learn those patterns by ear. And we hope to bring the importance of listening to coloratura to singers of any level, even if you only sing in the shower. While I queue up the next one, I will just give you a little bit of background. Nowadays, we very much think singers sing one kind of repertoire. Either they have heavy voices, so they sing Puccini and Wagner, or what have you. This is one of my favorite singers, Herman Jadovkar, who is a Latvian-born tenor who eventually he was of Russian nationality, but born in Latvia and eventually became Israeli. And he was an amazing singer who sang a lot of Wagner. He would be considered a Helden tenor now by the repertoire that he sang, but he also has incredible, incredible agility. And this is Herman Jadovkar singing Ecco ridente in cielo. I got so excited I went to a couple seconds too far.
Felice
it's almost tempting to like have the idea, because you can hear that there's so much richness in that voice, but you don't ever feel like he's, putting the bull in ballet slippers. He's singing with his voice, but he just has this incredible skill that he's developed. I'll give it back to Rochelle for our last.
So the thing that we are trying to teach our singers, right, is really to sing all of these skills in this very old-fashioned way. So when you saw in the chat that I wrote astonishing clarity without H's, a lot of singers who are famous for singing coloratura these days tend to sing ha 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 with kind of like a aspiration that really kind of like triggers each of the notes, and we have become kind of attached to that idea as like a very fun thing. But when you listen to these old singers, there is an astonishing beauty still in it, and you don't hear this kind of like the roughness on the voice, right? The other thing that we talk about a lot, oh, I see Derek is sharing, come fly with me, right? So for the singers, we have little essays to talk you through about like how do you achieve that skill in that old-fashioned way. We can talk another day about why that particular skill fell so out of use. It has to do with music history and the emergence of the German style, but that is for another day. The other, oh yeah, look at all of those. We have exercises on the website from the old treatises. Amazing facility that singers were taught. We are actually in our daily exercises intensive right in the middle of like really improving our coloratura patterns at the moment. The last skill we want to listen to a little is dynamics. These days, we tend to hear quite a bit of kind of like whispering, a kind of modern whispering, or a really harsh, what I would almost call shouting. In the old Italian days, when we listen to these old singers, we will hear an incredible palette of singing, of color that the singer can choose from, but it is always within the Bel Canto. It always stays in the beauty of sound. So when you listen to music with singers, you will see them write things like, oh, that was off the voice, or that was pressed, or that is too pushed, right? So that is how we listen to whether the piano sound, the softest sound, still carries the emotion of the singer, or it has just kind of become like a modern whisper, kind of in the way as Crutchfield was playing those voices that are kind of a little more, it's kind of the emotion is right here and it's not really carried on the breath. So Derek is going to share some examples of dynamics. Another thing that we will talk about, you will see a lot of people refer to chest voice. Oh, listen to that chest voice and head voice, those ideas of like singing, what I always say is like Julia Child. It's like how to make an egg. Yeah, it's like Julia Child spoke in chest voice and head voice all at the same time. So chest voice and head voice and piano and forte like work together. But that, as I say, is also a story for another day. Listen to how this singer sings the first high B flat in full voice.
So for those of you who aren't singers and don't think about singing that often, while I cue up hopefully at the correct time, Montserrat Caballé, that pitch you were just hearing in first really full voice and then a softer dynamic, that's all while managing that the vocal folds are encountering each other, hitting together about 475 or 500 times per second. So it's so the frequency is so fast that it's like if you imagine violin players playing louder by putting more weight in the bow, it's managing that with also the speed in such tiny places. This is Montserrat Caballé, queen of the float.
Gorgeous, gorgeous singing, just gorgeous singing. So what we are going to do is I'm going to give it over to Stephen, and what I want you all to do is like pass notes in class. I have no idea what Stephen is going to play, and this is what we've been doing for all the Sundays for the past 3 months, just listening to gorgeous music that Stephen shares with us and tells us a little about. Since we have heard in New York that all performances as we come out of the pandemic will be without intermission and no longer than 90 minutes, we will listen to music for another half hour, so you can practice to going to concerts for an hour and a half, and then you can have your glass of wine after that. So Stephen will play music for us until about 8:20 or so, and then we will shut it down, telling you about what's happening for the next 3 months. Over to you, Stephen.
I was muted. That was my dog who barked. Yes, he's got very good taste. His name is Hector. He's a West Highland Terrier, and he's a Caballé fan, as you heard. Let's see. I'm going to start with a couple acoustic recordings, those very early recordings that we know we have to use our imagination to imagine what they would have sounded like. But I'm going to start with a French tenor baritone duet from Les Pêcheurs de Perles, The Pearl Fishers, by Bizet. Many of you know this duet. It's very famous. It's famous in commercial music. It's famous as a favorite encore in concerts. Tenors love to sing it because it's got lots of B-flats. Baritones love to sing it because it's easy and they don't have to do much because they're lazy, you know. So, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that, baritones. Anyway, the duo that we're hearing are Edmond Clément and Marcel Journet. Now, if you know your singers very well, you'll know that Marcel Journet was actually a bass. He was a lyric bass, but his voice was so beautiful in the high register that he could easily encompass many baritone parts, and did. Edmond Clément was probably the foremost French lyric tenor of his day, famous throughout Europe, though oddly he was not a huge success in America. When he sang at the Met in about 1910, he was compared, like all other tenors of the time, to Caruso, and the public was Caruso crazy, and if it wasn't Caruso, they didn't want to know about it. So he didn't have a huge success in New York and resented that and went back to singing in Europe. I'll just get this the share going here. Sorry, I'm late in doing that. And this is notice especially how Clément takes his high notes in a very full-voiced but very gentle way. He doesn't slam into the high B flats like many tenors that we hear. Well, like many tenors that we hear nowadays.
Une
Steven, you're muted, sweetie pie.
I know. I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Please, yeah. Somebody muted me. So please, don't do that because when I'm on the screen, I can't figure out how to do it. The next thing I'm going to play is another duet. I'm just trying to figure out because I have too much stuff here for the evening. But this is a real treat. It's a 1907 version of the duet of Dr. Malatesta and Don Pasquale from the last act of Don Pasquale by Donizetti. There have been so many great versions of this delightful scene in which Pasquale plots to catch his wife, Sophronia, really Norina, in a compromising situation with a lover. Malatesta seems to go along with the plot, but really is relishing seeing the whole situation blow up in Don Pasquale's face. The two singers are Ferruccio Corradetti as Pasquale and Giuseppe De Luca as Malatesta, and especially listen to the wonderful asides and ad-libs that they add to the score, things you've never... Oh, thanks. I will do that. Move a little farther. Listen to things that you've never heard from the score before.
Va ben, ma riflettete, ho tutto preveduto, ma aspettate, vediamo pure, ma parlate. Prego. Accomodi prima lei. Eti, mantinente nel giardino discendiamo. Prendo meco la mia gente, il boschetto circondiamo. E la coppia sciagurata a un mio cenno imprigionata. Senza perdere un momento conduciamo il potestà, e la coppia sciagurata a un mio cenno imprigionata. Senza perdere un momento conduciamo al potestà, senza perdere un momento conduciamo al potestà, senza perdere un momento conduciamo al potestà. Io direi sentite un poco, noi due soli andiamo sul moto. Va bene, sì, poi stesso ci appostiamo, noi due soli ci appostiamo e da tempo dimostriamo. Ma non capisco, ma e la coppia sciagurata a un mio senno imprigionata. Senza perdere un momento conduciamo al potestà, e fra preghi e tra minacce d'avvertir la forza. E facciamo ai due promettere che la cosa restina, e facciamo ai due promettere che la cosa restina, e facciamo ai due promettere che la cosa restina. No, perché guardate tanto, e si fatto scioglimento, poca pena e al tradimento. Riflettete, mia sorella, vada fuori di casa mia, altri fatti non lo fa. È un affare delicato, vuol ben esser ponderato. Ponderate, esaminate, ma in mia casa non lo vogliono, uno scandalo fare, non importa, vergogna poi ne avrei, non importa, non conviene, non sta bene, altro modo io troverò, non non sta bene, non conviene, ma lo schiaffo qui restò, ma per uno schiaffo solo quanti doveva darmene due, no, ecco io direi, cosa che l'ho trovata, benedetto, dite, ma dite presto. Nel boschetto quasi ci appostiamo, di là tutto dir possiamo, se costante il tradimento la cacciate su due piedi. Bravo, va benone, son contento, va benone, son contento, bravo, il contento. Aspetta, cara sposino, mia vendetta già s'avvicina, già si preme, già t'ha raggiunto, tutto in un punto l'hai da scontar. Vedrai se giovino raggiri a cava le sorrisi belle di sospiri e lacrime, vedrai se giovino come si tenne di sospiri e lacrime. Or voglio prendere la mia rivincita, sì nella trappola da cascare, aspetta, la mia vendetta, tutto in un punto l'hai da scontar, tutto in un punto l'hai da scontar, Il poverino sogna vendetta, non sa il meschino quel che l'aspetta, invano preme, invano arrabbia, e più si ingabbia, non può scappar. Invano accumula progetti e calcoli, non sa che fabbrica casellinare, non vedi semplice che nella trappola da se medesimo, non vedi semplice che nella trappola da se medesimo, che nella trappola si va a gettare. Invano preme, invano arrabbia, e chi si ingabbia non può scappare, Va bene, son contento, quanti, ci appostiamo, tutto dir possiamo. Vedrai se giovino raggire cavoli, non vedi bene la procedere, vedrai se giovino non vedi bene che non te ne logre, non vedi bene che nella trappola, aspetta, il non cambia, e chi non cambia l'hai da scampar, e chi si ingabbia non può scappar, tutti in un punto l'hai da scontare. Non può scappare, l'hai da scontare, non può scappare, l'hai da scontare. Don Pasquale! L'hai da scontare!
Oops. Well, I gave away my next. Selection, which is a modern recording. We do modern recordings here as well as old ones, and yes, Martina is coming up. I just discovered this the other day, and it turns out there is a floating around somewhere. The complete performance is floating around. I've just ordered it on CD, of course. 1971 San Francisco Opera recording of Un ballo in maschera, sung by Martina Arroyo and Luciano Pavarotti. This was Pavarotti's role debut, first time he ever sang the role of Riccardo. He had never done it in Italy, and he'd never done it at the Met or anyplace else. This was his debut performance. And it was conducted by an unusual conductor for this kind of repertoire, Charles Mackerras. Those of you who are classical music fans know that Charles Mackerras is generally thought of as a Mozart conductor, as a specialist in Czech music, especially Dvorak and Janacek, Martinu, those kind of composers. But This is the love duet, which I will try to start over again, from 1971, Arroyo and Pavarotti.
Sai tu che sera riva il rigor sottile c'era il cuore, quel suo grido l'orrore, sinché e ti freggia. Non sai tu che seria, se cessasse di batter. Quante notti ho vegliato aderante, come a volte infelice lottare, quante volte d'oggi implorare la pietà che tu chiedi da me. Ma per questo potuto un istante infelice non viver di te. Mami, mami, sia distrutto il rigore sua amicizia nel sé. È spinto tu, è spinto tu, è tutto via perché l'amore, perché l'amore, perché l'amore. Quando soave brivido acceso petto irromba, a chi ad ascolti ancora rispondermi così. Strani di queste tenebre, a lui consacro il cuore, mi paga di d'amore, e mi consorga, consorga, mi paga di d'amore, e mi consorga il Dio. Ai sapore mio sogno aspetta, che cante torna in petto, l'amor che vivere. Amelia, mami, Amelia, mami,
That's what I say. Bravo, bravo. Well, guys, this gives you a little idea of what we do on Sunday afternoons and how we get our kicks, so to speak. But this is fun. We listen to opera mostly, but we listen to art song as well. We even had a day of pop bel canto, singers of pop material from Helen Morgan through Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald, down to Rufus Wainwright, all of whom sing well and sing legato and one breath impulse per phrase. That's a trademarked Rochelle quote. I'll give this back to Rochelle now, right?
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's always so much fun to figure out what Stephen is bringing and to see the excitement in the chat when people are like, oh my God, how can you not just love this? Before we tell you a little about what's happening in the next 3 months, anybody have any feelings to share? Any experiences to share, just like having fun? It's great, right? So I'm going to ask Derek to share the screen and just show you what is coming up, what we're planning for the next 3 months. So I'm just going to run through it pretty quickly. Next week, we have a conversation about how high can you go, and it is about the highest high singing in for sopranos. And there will be teachers, voice scientists, all kinds of people talking about this thing called whistle register. Then two very exciting things, Sundays, that's all about Maria Callas. Derek will share with you 10 must-listen recordings of Callas to prepare. And there is also an article that you need to read, because Will Crutchfield is coming to join us to talk about his article that was first published in the New Yorker. Derek just put it in the chat if you want to download it. It's also on the website, and we will listen to an entire Sunday of Callas. We are going to talk a little more about voice science and what all of the new equipment is allowing us to see. All of these things that we were talking about, legato, dynamics, coloratura, what does it look like when we look at that through a program called Voce Vista, which was quite a thing when it struck the music world, the singing world. In April, Derek, can you just make the screen a little bigger for me? Oh, my old eyes. Oh, I've got it. In April, we start with listening to our first entire opera, which is going to be fun on Easter Sunday. We will listen to Cavalleria Rusticana, which takes place on Easter morning. It will be a very interesting thing because it will not only be one recording. Stephen is curating a performance of Cavalleria Rusticana for us. Then we have 3 great Sundays, opera in the papers, that will be led by a combination of Stephen, Judith Malafront from Opera News, who is here with us today as well. Judy, thanks for joining us, and Dave. And this is going to be called Opera in the Papers, and we are going to all read together reviews of singers and listen to them. So this is basically what we do. We're trying to get good at explaining what it is we hear, and that is kind of what reviewers do or are supposed to do. So we're going to read some old reviews of singers and listen to them. In May, we take a little break from opera, and we listen to different things. We are going to listen to choirs on May 2nd. We're listening to oratorio on May 9th. And then the 16th, I'm very excited about, we're listening to cantors. During Vakai, we explored a lot of their fantastic recordings of Jewish cantors singing with astonishing agility and beauty, and we're going to explore that tradition. On the 23rd, we're listening to instruments trying to sing like singers. A lot of my young singers often come to music as singers and do not really have a background in instrumental music. Stephen is a lover of all kinds of music, as we've gotten to know him in the last 3 months. So we will also have some instrumental listening. And then, back by popular demand, we will listen more to art songs, Stephen's favorite art songs. I'm going to give it over to Derek to close this meeting. Thank you so much from my side for joining us. Derek with the last words.
Thank you so much to everyone, especially to Stephen, for curating all those wonderful recordings, as he always does. We're really looking forward to the next 3 months of programming that we've planned. This is all just, we're planning to continue over the summer. So there will always be a 3 p.m. slot that's open to the Bel Canto Bootcamp community of members, where we can all join together and hopefully continue to provide a vast array of different perspectives, whether it's reading reviews, like we'll do, I put in the chat this article that's available on the website. If you look at Bel Canto Bookshelf, it was originally published in the New Yorker, which you can see here. and we'll be joined by the author himself, who you heard from about the microphone, to talk about that, or our opera in the papers later. I'm super excited about our voice science stuff coming up. You can see in this, if you see the little colorful bit in the middle above the very colorful red hair that matches, you can see that because the voice is the one instrument that we can't see, we've come up with a lot of technology to visualize it. And we'll learn a little bit about that and what we can learn by looking at singing. So these are every Sunday at 3 p.m. is when we meet kind of as a community. We have different programs from singers going on and during the year. But if you are a Bel Canto Bootcamp member and you've been enjoying them, we hope to see you at as many of them as possible. And if you're considering maybe joining us, you can go to our website, just belcantobootcamp.com, and you can find become a member, and there's all the details there about what that means and what we can offer you. So I think, yes, Rochelle put a link in the chat. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, there's also contact forms here on the website that you can grab us. So we hope that you have enjoyed tonight's program from Bel Canto Bootcamp and from Rochelle and Stephen and myself, and that we hope to see you going forward in the next 3 months. It's very hard to read the chat and talk at the same time, but by 2022, I'll master it. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and thanks for joining us.